This is my spoiler review for Morbius, everyone's favourite vampire, Michael Morbius, everyone's favourite Spider-Man villain, starring Jared Leto, everybody's favourite actor, everybody's favourite Joker. So Morbius is not good. Morbius is exactly what everyone was expecting. It's pretty bad. It's not great at first. Like, the movie starts, the Sony thing comes up, it does its own Marvel thing where it's like, it's associated to Marvel, it's Marvel, but it's not quite Marvel, it's Marvel adjacent. You know, it's got the brand, it's got the logo. I'm sitting there, I'm like pretty excited. I'm like, what kind of nightmarish, insane, Sony-made Marvel movie am I in for? Jared Leto, the craziest, most insane actor that's ever lived. He's crazy. What kind of crazy performance are we gonna get? What kind of crazy hijinks can Morbius, the living vampire, possibly get up to in this insane, crazy movie? My expectations were kind of hoping for this madness, insane, terrible film. A film that was just filled with insanity and craziness. We've got Michael Keaton's and maybe all the Spider-Man, or none of the Spider-Man, or some of the Spider-Man, or just insane stuff and crazy Sony trying to, you know, do everything, but they're doing nothing. I just wanted something. I wanted to feel something. And then there's only like 20 people in the audience, and the movie starts, and one guy at the start, one guy right at the front of the audience, he just goes, "Yeah, Morbius! Woo!" And I'm like, I'm in. I'm so excited. I'm gonna have so much fun. And then the film just slowly beats the hype, the energy, the momentum, any goodwill just got beaten out of me slowly, until I came to the end of the movie and I was like, Morbius, more like Borebius, because this is boring as hell. Like, just, so boring, so generic. It's like an early 2000s movie. We've got early 2000s villain who's like, I'm just like you, Michael Morbius, but evil. So Michael Morbius and Milo, played by Matt Smith, they both got the same thing, they got the same blood genetic disease. And so when they both get their vampiric powers, Michael Morbius is like, I'm a good vampire. And Milo's like, I'm a bad vampire. And then they do some jumping about with some Nightcrawler kind of swirly CGI stuff. So every time they move, there's a CGI swirly mist cloud of CGI that just kind of drifts about with them. The first time when he's all like, "Arr, arr, I'm a vampire," arr, and he jumps across the room and it does it. And I'm like, this is kind of fun. Like Nightcrawler-esque CGI jumping about, I love a bit of swirly CGI smoke and mist. This is a bit of fun. It's a PG vampire film, but I knew that coming in, so like, who cares? And then every subsequent scene where he does the Michael Morbius jumps and the CGI swirly smoke, it looks terrible. It feels like it gets worse and worse and worse. There's some fight scenes with him and Matt Smith that are so bad. It gets to the point where I'm like, the last time I remember being like, this is so bad and boring with two guys with the same powers jumping about with swirly CGI, was in Venom 1, where they had big squid tentacles and tendrils, and there were like squiddy, gooey tendrils flying everywhere. But at least in that, they're gooey and kind of look kind of good. I mean, no, I didn't like the first Venom, didn't think that worked. But in Venom 2, I felt like they kind of improved on it, and I don't know, something about that film I liked. I don't know, I know I'm the only one, but I kind of liked that. So this felt like, once again, a step down, pretty much just at that level of Venom 1. And then I'm like, well, of course, this is Sony. But I was hoping for something crazier and bigger and more kind of swing for the fences. And we get to that. We get to that insane swinging for the fences. But that's in the post-credit scenes that are completely insane. But I'm not talking about post-credit scenes here. I've already done a post-credits video. Go check it out as I lose my mind trying to figure out what the hell was going on in those scenes. But this is about the movie. And the movie has 3 huge issues that kind of really stop this from being even entertaining in a bad way. So the most egregious thing this film does is cast Matt Smith, the Doctor Who himself. My favourite Doctor as well. Everyone's got their own favourite Doctor, but I love Matt Smith's Doctor. I love all of his stuff, even the bad episodes. I'm like, it's good, because Matt Smith is there, doing his thing. He's like, I got a fez, I love it. I love his hand waviness. I just love the music. That's everything about him I love so much. So to see him in anything, even in Terminator Genesis, when he popped up, he's like, I'm Skynet or something or whatever. I can't remember. I haven't seen that for a while. I was like, it's him. It's Matt Smith. It's the Doctor. 10 out of 10 movie just because he's in it. So the fact that he's in it, I'm so excited. He had one shot on the trailer where he was doing a fun little walk. I can't wait for him. What's he going to be? He's got the same blood disease and doesn't walk properly. Why would you put nothing but him walking properly in your trailer? Okay, so he's the bad guy. I mean, pretty obvious from the get-go, he's the bad guy. He gets this really over-the-top bullying scene. All these bullies are like, we're bullies from an 80s movie and we hate you for no reason. Oh, we're going to be the most rude, mean, awful people and hopefully we get murdered, but we don't get murdered. And they just beat the shit out of him for no reason because they're just awful monsters. And then he hits one of them and you're like, ooh, bit of an angry streak. Bit of a villain backstory thing, origin-y or whatever. But it's bad and, you know, very flimsy and half-baked, but it's there, I guess. And so he's all like, oh, I'm rich and have no money, and I don't have a job, but it's not explained how I have money or anything. It's all flimsy, half-baked nothingness. And then Matt Smith is suddenly like, I've got the powers in this completely farcical scene that is so over the top and ridiculous. And it's revealed that he could walk all good and he's got the magical vampire powers. And we have a Kaisei Soze scene where he's like limping and then he's strolling and walking and the music's like and like that kind of epic orchestral and it's just like building and building. And it builds up like a fake sense of like, oh my god, it's a big scene happening. But it's preposterous and ridiculous. He leaves his cane in the cell. He's just throwing a blood sack in the cell. The cops aren't like, you can't leave anything in there. Like, they're just so lax. It's ridiculous. He walks out of there. It's super, just, it's a terrible scene. And all I kept thinking, how dare you steal the Kaisei Soze moment that kind of makes that classic film iconic and just do it in this. But just so much of this film just made me so angry because it's Matt Smith. Imagine an amazing Matt Smith, like, villain performance in a Marvel movie. I would just love a film where Jared Leto is a crazy vampire and it's like a body horror. Because, you know, at one point he's walking and he's like, oh, I'm still all good, I'm Michael Morbius. And he starts twisting and contorting back into having the disease. He needs more blood. And I started thinking, oh, that'd be really fun to have this kind of body horror film. I know it doesn't have to be bloody, but a kind of a darker, gothic movie about a man, like a scientist, turning into the vampire, and then Matt Smith, the evil vampire. And my heart got so sad at the idea of Matt Smith playing like a vampire in a superhero movie. And the possibilities are endless. And then in this movie, the possibilities are the most generic, the most standard, the most basic, exactly what you'd expect from just a draft one thing that we saw in 2000. Like, it's just so bad. Every scene he has that's meant to be a big emotional moment where he's like, you're my father, but you always loved Michael Morbius more than you loved me. And he's like, no, I didn't. I spent my entire life with you. And just the dialogue, the performance, everything's so bad, and it just breaks my heart, because Matt Smith is amazing. I love him so much, but he's completely wasted in this. The performance is nothing. The Michael Morbius, but I'm evil face, the Milo Morbius face, where he's like, I'm a vampire, terrible. There's bits where he's like, oh, I'm dancing and doing a little jive, I'm having fun being a vampire. Cringe, terrible. It just made me kind of go, I should rewatch Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Or probably Angel. Angel Season 5. I remember that being amazing. Haven't seen it in a long time. I'm going to go back and remind myself why I like vampires at all. Because at this point, I'm like, no, I don't. So on top of the atrocious crime of wasting Matt Smith as a villain in your movie, we've got Michael Morbius, our hero, the favoritist vampire, the living vampire, whatever the hell that means, played by Jared Leto. He is such a big, crazy actor, always doing crazy, mad performances. I've heard that in The House of Gucci, he's doing an insane accent and going over the top and being ridiculous. And I've heard it doesn't work for that. I haven't seen it. But recently, I've kind of got back on the Jared Leto train, like a little bit. All that Joker out of, you know, method acting, just kind of soured me on him completely. But recently, I've been watching the Apple TV show We Crashed, where him and Anne Hathaway give amazing performances. It's only like 4 episodes in, but he's big, he's bold, he's got a crazy accent, and he's just crazy, and he's manic, and he's insane. And I buy this crazy, manic Jared Leto playing this big billionaire guy who's like, I can control the world, I'm the next Mark Zuckerberg! It's an amazing performance, it's so heightened and extreme, something that I think he can do well. And in this, it's nothing. It's like watching Nicolas Cage just sit there and not do a crazy performance. It's like, that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to see Jared Leto do something. Do an accent. Do a thing. Just do something. He's just there for so much of the film. He's just like, I won't drink the blue blood. I won't drink the red blood, sorry. I'll just drink the blue blood. Matrix. Back in 1999, they asked the question, blue pill or red pill? Now Morbius, 2022, asked the question, blue blood or red blood? There's a whole thing about blue blood and red blood, and he's like, I don't want to drink the red blood. But it just, there's so much of him being like, I won't do the red. What's it feel like when you do the red? I'm all about that blue, baby. And it's just, I don't like it. It's bad. It's just so bland. The only moment there was like a spark of creative insanity was like, he's got this big, giant cylinder thingy. It's like he calls it a fish tank, but for his bats. And all the bats are swirling about and they're just there all the time, like a fish tank. But there are bats. And at one point, he walks in there and he's like, I'm like a Dracula or like the Batman. And there's just bats flying everywhere. And he's like, I'm one with the bats and the bats are one with me. Amazing. That was the only spark of like, wait, is this film going to get crazy? And then later in the film, he's like, Rah! And he summons all the bats like a big Dracula, or like Batman, and Batman Begins. And he summons a bunch of bats, and they lift him up, and then he shoots them like fists, but not cool, you know, like in Dracula Untold. Not that that was very cool, but you know, that's pretty much Dracula if he was a Marvel movie. And he's like punching with the bats, but it's all so muddled and messy and CGI that it's just like, I'm just like, what am I looking at? Like, it's just so much is happening. It was so just bland and colorless and just flat. Like, there was color, but it was just the way it was so murky. Like, when Matt Smith and him are bouncing about and doing their swirly CGI mist fightiness, it's just so muddled and crowded. And there were so many shots where I'm like, there's nothing happening. It's just CGI smashy, just so bizarre, so boring. The third act is one of the worst third acts I've seen in a very long time. Since Venom. The third biggest disappointment and waste of an idea in a movie is the fact that this movie, it hints, the trailer is like, murderer, Spider-Man, he's there. And, you know, you've got Adrian Toomes and he's like, I'm here, I'm in the movie. And, you know, he says, I am Venom. And, you know, it's got all these Spider-Man references, essentially, is what I'm getting at. None of them are in the movie. The Venom bit is, but they've cut it and it's different. And, like, I love in the trailer where he's like, I am Venom. No. I'm just me, Mr. Dr. Michael Morbius, here at your service. Ha 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 ha. Doesn't say that, so it's just him going Venom and going rah. It's terrible, it's bad, feels just weirdly out of place, but all the Spider-Man stuff, it's gone. It's gone entirely. It's just, you know, it's almost like clickbaity, but for a movie where it's like, you're going to go see this movie, maybe Spider-Man's going to pop up. And then it got delayed, and I'm like, because of No Way Home, and everyone like, what? No Way Home? More like, No Way, yes, please. Terrible. Don't listen. That was awful. This movie has destroyed my brain. I'm making terrible puns, like saying this is Borebius, not Glorbius. Just awful puns. The movie has just mushed my brain into nothingness. This movie is so bland and boring. I feel like I have more to say, but I also feel like I have nothing to say. It's one of those films. It's like every single scene, I could rip it apart and put it back together and explain why it doesn't work. Like those opening scenes, it's all mishmashed. We've got a big vampire scene, and then it cuts back to his childhood past. Then it cuts back to him, and he's like, remember that thing that happened in Costa Rica? I was like, oh, this is so jumbled and messy, like a jigsaw you put together wrong. And then there's like a scene super early on where he goes to get a Nobel Prize, and he goes to get up on stage, and then it cuts to two scenes where people are like, you shouldn't have said that and not got your Nobel Prize. Sony, show, don't tell. Don't tell and then tell again and not show. What are you doing, Sony? You just, But it's, you know, it's not so bad that I could just go on and on. It's like, it's all that. It's all just that. It's all generic nothingness. It's so boring and bland. There's no Spider-Man. I would have just loved this movie to just be like an origin story for like 45 minutes. And then he turns and he kills all the people that he does. And they're all like, oh no, you shouldn't have killed those people. They're bad people. But still, murderer, like, oh no. And then the back half, just Andrew Garfield. He rocks up and he's like, bow, 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 Spidey. Flip. And he's just doing his shooty webs, and they have a big fight, and then he's like, maybe Michael Morbius, you're not so bad. He's like, I'm not so bad. Arrgh. I don't know. I've been watching Spider-Man animated show 1994. Amazing. Season 2, there's an arc with Michael Morbius, and I just finished, I didn't get through the whole arc. Ran out of time before I went to see the movie, but there's an amazing arc and scene where there's Kraven the Hunter and the Punisher and Michael Morbius and Spider-Man's there, and he's got 6 arms making Marchump look like a little bitch, and they're all fighting, and it's just insanity and madness, and I just kind of wish maybe that was the movie, rather than just this bland, generic, early 2000s bloody origin story, villain, but he's not a villain. Well, we're all the same. The hero, the villain, we're the same. I mean, it makes people like Yellow Jacket look like incredible. Like Iron Man. The biggest issue is like, oh, they just fight at the end and he's like a bigger Iron Man. It's a marvel. It's a miracle of filmmaking compared to this film. It's just so boring. It's so bland. It feels like it's gone back 30 years. I don't understand. It could have been something crazy. And there's so much potential for it to be just terribly insane. Like, so crazy and big and wild that you're like, what is going on? Like, this is madness. Like, what is happening? But instead it's just like, this is happening. Oh, and then this plot point. Oh, yeah. Oh, and then this plot point. Yeah. Well, I figured, because I've seen this movie 600 times at this point, and, you know, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it just keeps going, just keeps hitting you over the head with scenes that aren't good. I just got so sick of watching Matt Smith just not be good. I got so sick of watching Jared Leto not be all Jared Leto-y. And I just got so sick of Michael Morbius, everyone's least favorite vampire, the living vampire. Who cares? Why is there even a Michael Morbius film? If you're gonna give us Michael Morbius, like a D-list random vampire guy in Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery, at least do something insane with it. At least make me go, oh, I can't believe they made a movie where all this crazy stuff happened. Oh, it sucks. But, you know what doesn't suck? That post-credit scene. Oh my god, they're exciting, they're amazing, they're intense, and I've made a whole other video where I just lose my mind over the insanity of them. Bloody go check that out. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment below. I'd love to know what people think of Michael Morbius, the living vampire.